Welcome to Season 6 of the Long-Winded One podcast. This is Spoiler Sessions, Lit RPG, the only show where spoilers don't spoil anything. We're digging into fan theories, side characters, and the lore authors left in the drawer.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Season 6 of the Long-Winded One podcast. I wasn't sure at first there would be a Season 6. I spent a lot of time writing here recently, and sometimes when I get in writing mode, I don't do a lot of talking and I don't do a lot of reading, believe it or not. But I can't ever quit you guys, JD. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing an author in the lit RPG space named JD Mullenary Sr. And he has two series, or a series and a book that you're going to be familiar with. A series formerly called Creation. It was known that way on Royal Road and is now known as the Symphony series, published by Podium, I believe. Is that right, JD?
That's correct, yeah.
And QuestWright, which is now available still on Royal Road, I believe. So welcome to the podcast, JD.
Thank you for having me, Jared. I really appreciate it. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to let everybody know this is all about community for me, as I've said before. About a year ago, you did an interview with a friend of mine, Saga Scribe, and you really went into details about books you recommend people to read, like what your background is. You're kind of a Renaissance man, and I would love for you to actually tell people about that because it's really interesting, your former careers. But you're also an educator like me. You're an English teacher. You're into, we talked kind of online about this. You're into gaming with the kids too at school. You're a family man and you're a writer. So I definitely want to steer people towards the Saga Scribe interview. It's a very good one. Tonight, I'm going to use something that I'm very familiar with, and that's the man, the legend, J.R.R. Tolkien, in order to frame some of the stuff that we talk about in your books, mainly like things like subcreation, negative space in writing, and mythology, because it's apt for your two series. So I was wondering now if you could, first of all, I touched on this. Could you please tell us? Everybody's got to hear this. Tell me your list of professions that you did before you became a teacher and a writer.
Okay, so hold on 1 second. I got to yell at my dog at the same time. Mabel, shut up! No one likes it. Okay, so I started out as a grocery clerk, bagging groceries, and then I morphed into a security guard, into a computer salesman, and a software manager. Then I was a post-anesthesia care unit orderly. Then I was an x-ray tech who specialized in emergency and surgical procedures. And then I was a assistant manager at Blockbuster. Then I was in the Air Force, and I was a TV reporter. And then I was in Afghanistan, and I was a combat correspondent. I would go out with special forces and 3-6 field artillery, stuff like that, film them as we're getting shot at. And then I was stay-at-home dad, and then I was a night manager at a large luxury hotel, and now I'm an high school English teacher supervisor, and the head esports coach for my school, which is one of the best in the country right now.
That's incredible, man. And it's people like you, people that have gone out and experienced the world that I think are the best writers, particularly people who have some experience with, as you said on Saga's podcast, I don't really struggle with grammar and punctuation. You got that stuff nailed down. But let's talk about your writing, right? So, and the way that I want to organize this, we have 26 minutes left. I'll try to keep this.
It was like 10 minutes just talking about my career. There it is.
No, it's because I'm blabbing. But in the chat so far, Saga's in the chat and Pop's in the chat, two other podcasters. So welcome to those guys. So the way that I want to organize this, and you'll see why later on, is I want to talk about QuestWright first, and then we'll talk about Symphony second if we can. And there's some unwritten lore and some side characters that we want to talk about in QuestWright. So if you could you give us like a 10,000 foot view of what QuestWright is about?
Okay, so QuestWright is a post-apocalyptic lit RPG quest management saga. So that's the best way I can frame it without being overly, reductive. Basically, it's a world where there's a system, there's monsters, there's incursions, there's portals, there's all kinds of weird stuff happening. I invented a system from scratch for this. I always invent a system from scratch for this. I don't use Dungeons and Dragon rules. There's no classes. There's never been classes in any of my books. Everything has to come from the ground up, and I work with my beta readers really hard to make sure continuity exists and that it all logically and grounded fits together. The really interesting thing about the series is that they get callings, which you could call a class in a sense, but it's not really apt. And the further into the book series you get, the more the callings make sense. But they evolve with the character. So no one person has the same abilities and the exact same path and road through life that they're going to have as another person. So I find that really unique about the story, and it makes it really fun to write because people never know what's going to come out.
That's incredible, man. I struggle so much with the system, and just seeing people like you're like a maestro. Is that okay to use maestro since your series is called Symphony? Is that?
I know. I actually have a lot of musical terminology in Symphony too. Like the moon he's on is called sonata, and I did that intentionally. I like to thematically build my worlds.
Well, I'm going to set you up for the next thing to talk about here. We're going to focus on QuestWright. We have right now live, we have 5 people in the chat. So if you have questions, I'm monitoring the chat. Go ahead and put them in there, and at an opportune time, I will bring them up. JD, you don't have to focus on the chat if you don't want to. Let's talk about unwritten lore. And this also kind of ties into side characters. There's a character referred to as Gatekeeper Jim. And I was wondering if you could tell us about that character and then about this concept of unwritten lore.
So in order for a character, and I learned this from an author a long time ago, I think it was Ari Salvatore who said it. In order for a character to feel real and lived in, you're supposed to create this whole background and plot about their life that you can pull from at a moment's notice that creates their characterization, that gives their tone, that gives a flavor whenever you see them, whenever they're talking. Gatekeeper Jim is in QuestWright Book 1. He's not shown in QuestWright Book 2 because of extenuating circumstances my readers will learn about soon. But in Book 1, he's there, and he's one of the first people that Cassio Vale, my protagonist, really talks to. And he's just this fat man who stands inside of a booth. And he calls himself a fat man. It's cool if you say it, He's a fat man that stands inside of a booth at the entrance to the guild hall. And his job is just to kind of look at people as they're coming in and leaving and making sure nothing weird is happening. He's Gatekeeper Jim. And he has a real attraction to sweets. He likes to tell Cass things like, go out and find me something that will make me regret my life's choices. And so he's actually, what my readers don't know, and what I've never written into the story, is he's actually extremely high level. He's one of the highest level people in the whole area. And I've never made it known that he's like a gourmand, and he gets stronger based on the food he eats. And so I have this whole backstory for him, and I have his son named Jimmy, who I never mention until at the very end of the book, who saves the protagonist's life. And it's like I have this whole background between the two of them, and I'm never going to mention it. I had a complaint today on Royal Road that was like, wait a second, hold on. You just gave out this huge explicit spoiler that this enterprise, this company's name is not their real name, and that there's this whole reason why, and you're never going to tell us. And I was like, no, that's for me to know. Maybe I'll tell you later in book 5. Stay tuned.
Oh,
and
man.
Gatekeeper Jim is like that. He's like, if I get the chance to keep writing the series, he's going to come back, and he's a straight up monster when he's fighting. But I'm never actually going to show it unless I can get there. And so you have all these characters with lived in backgrounds that I don't want to have to explain unless it comes up and it's deserved for the role or for the position in the story.
And I think that adds so much, and it gets readers wanting more. And that brings up the concept that I mentioned I wanted to bring up. It's about the use of negative space in writing, right? And that's think of it in terms of well, what about the Ent wives, right? If we're thinking in terms of Tolkien, like the Ents were these tree people. Well, they lost their wives, right? Where did they go? There's this whole story behind it that only Tolkien knew, right? But it made people wonder. People, are we ever going to find out?
Well, they're at Saruman's bordello. I thought you knew that. He has this brothel set up in the back of the tower.
Yeah,
that's where all the Ent wives are.
That's right. Well, it's funny. So you're mentioning the fat man in a little booth.
Yeah.
He reminds me, we were talking about Tom Bombadil before we went live, and he seems like maybe he's your Tom Bombadil, right? Like, the eldest among the trees is how Treebeard explained Tom, right? Like everybody knows Tom as something incredible. And so anyway, look at this. We have a surprise guest here that we're going to add to the stage.
Oh no.
Hello, my friend.
Hey, friends.
The man, the legend, Johnathan McClain. How are you, sir?
Hey, man. Good, Jared. How are you?
I'm good. And JD, now you see why I wanted to start with QuestWright, because we have a very special guest with us, Johnathan, who narrates the Symphony series, who joined
wonderfully.
us. Yeah. He's joining us all the way from out in California.
Hey, JD, it's nice to see you in person.
I know. We've actually we talked on Reddit a little bit, but we've never actually had a conversation. So this is our first time.
That's right. California, place that you know very well.
Yeah. I miss Santa Barbara all the time.
So JD lives in Texas, but is from California. This is what I've gleaned in speaking with JD.
Yeah, I'm from Santa Barbara, California. I based QuestWright in San Antonio, Texas. And I based Symphony in Santa Barbara, California, and the series I'm writing after QuestWright is based in Santa Barbara, California.
So we Saga Scribe in the chat, by the way, when Johnathan popped in, was like, literally, what? He's excited. He's excited to see you, Johnathan.
Good to be seen.
So, Johnathan, we're going to finish. We have one more thing to talk about in terms of QuestWright, which is JD's series that he's writing. I'm assuming you're writing both. But since it sounds like you have about another, 46 books in the Symphony series in your mind. But so there are some side characters that I wanted to ask about. Is that a side character? Is it okay to ask about Johnny?
Yeah, Johnny was a character that was introduced only in 2 scenes, but has a reverberation echo throughout the whole series, because he's a guy who took a quest from Cassio to go to the Red Tower with a message, and it was an important message because there's all these weird events happening around the city, and they're trying to get to the bottom of it. And Johnny is, about halfway there, and then he dies. And he gets killed pretty horrifically by what's called a Skreel, Skreel. And Cassio stumbles across his body when he's trying to escape some Skreels. And he finds out his message was never delivered. The quest failed. And it freaks him out and puts him into some kind of extreme defensive, mode. And he ends up killing the Skreel that's trying to kill him. But then Johnny is like stamped in his mind. He always has this minor form of PTSD where every time he thinks about giving up, or he thinks about, what dire circumstances can occur if he doesn't succeed, I actually put in italics Johnny, and then he snaps into it and he keeps going. So he uses it as like a barrier to keep fear at bay.
And is this a character that people in your comments section ask about a lot?
No, they don't think about him. But the thing is I had a whole short story I wrote about Johnny, so I knew what happened to him, where he went out and there were actual, I can't get into it because it ruins the book one ending.
Okay,
there were other people involved that were not friendly with the city, and that they were directing the monsters, and Johnny tried to run to get the message out, and that's how he ended up dying.
Yeah, we have to be careful around here about what kind of spoilers we're actually getting into.
Yeah, it'll give away too much, but it's going to be pretty cool.
And Johnathan, when you hear something like a creature like Skreel as a narrator, does that okay, do I have to ask the author how to pronounce this, or am I just doing my best guess here?
Whenever possible, I always want to ask, fortunately, I think, JD has a nice guide book that I have been provided that is useful. And in fact, with the publisher that is publishing the Symphony series, they do a great job. Podium, they do a great job of providing. I think they requested, well, because they do for my book series as well, they request pronunciations, not just on a spreadsheet, but you actually provided me audio files of the way that you would pronounce the proper names and so forth. So fortunately, it mitigates all of that stuff. But the worst, like the biggest nightmare that I can imagine is candidly, fucking up somebody's hard work. And so I do my best to make sure that that is not going to happen.
Yeah, I record those pronunciation guides at school using live YouTube, and then I just unlist it. So it's always fun. I'm sure people outside of my office can hear me being, like Dionysus.
Yeah. Leviosa Patronum and all that stuff. Okay. Anyway, let's shift gears to Symphony since Johnathan is here. So Johnathan, the way spoiler sessions work now, Jonathan's been on the podcast previously in season 5 when I was making my podcasting foray into lit RPG. I had been a reader of the genre for years. We really, we kind of took our time and really sort of drilled into some topics. And when you do that, the podcast episodes are an hour and a half, 2 hours long. We have 14 minutes left. And so, Johnathan, we're talking about unused scenes, side characters, things that people really want to know without giving away the whole thing.
Sure.
And so if it's okay, JD, now we're going to shift gears to Symphony, and I would love for you to give like a 10,000 foot view of that series.
Okay, so I'm going to repeat a little bit of what I said on Saga's podcast, so don't hate me.
No,
the premise for writing Symphony was simply that I'm lazy. I wrote I spent 5 years world building and building up this whole series, and then I ended up not using it because it felt like it pigeonholed me into writing very specifically, and I just didn't want to do it. I'm the opposite of Tolkien in that completely. I mean, not like you can compare yourself to him, but I mean, that man built a world and then just threw a story in. I tried to do the same and found out I was completely lacking in a sense. So instead of writing in world building, I decided to write about a guy who built worlds. In the first 20 chapters, oh my God, I was writing them day by day because I didn't know the rules for Royal Road. When you post up a story there, you're supposed to have 20 chapters ready to go and beautiful. And then you throw it up all at once and everyone's like, wow, and and glamour. And I wasn't doing that. I was writing day by day. And then it hit Rising Stars. And then I was at like 1,000 followers. And then it kept going up. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so the beginning of Symphony took me a lot of editing. But while I was working on it, I started planting seeds. And there's somewhere in the first book of Symphony, there's somewhere around 110 references. In the second book of Symphony, there's somewhere around 87. In the third book, there's somewhere around 120. In fact, I even put a Path of Ascension reference on there because I was really getting into the story. And in the fourth book, I really squeezed down the references. I only put like 50 because there was too much happening and the whole ending is absolutely nuts. But I did all of these things and I was building up Symphony so fast that I had to go back and edit and fix so that when it went to Jonathan's hands, I didn't want him to have to stumble and deal with awkwardness all the time. And so I ended up editing the whole book series. Each book's like 10 times just to make sure that it flowed and it made sense.
Well, JD, if I could, I got to go back to when you said you said this on Saga's podcast too. You said, "Oh, no, it's so and so because I'm lazy." You do not strike me as a lazy person in the slightest, and I actually think there is a good comparison to Tolkien. I mentioned this concept of sub-creation, which is something that Tolkien supposedly coined the term, right? And it's like a creation inside of kind of the real world, but you take it a step farther. Where the characters are actually doing the creating. You know what I mean? They're creating a system for creation inside of the world. That, to me, that's too meta for me to even wrap my mind around. No part of that sounds lazy to me.
I mean, I thought it would be easier to just have a guy build the world as I went. That way, instead of having to invent a culture, on the spot that has 1,000 years of history, I could invent a culture on the spot that has a year of history, and then you get to watch as it expands and grows. And that's kind of what happens in book 2. In book 2, he starts planting humans, like growing them like flowers. And then the culture of those people starts to expand, because they're all basically like giant, cloned, made up babies. And so then they have to like develop themselves, and then they have to pick their name, and then it gets really weird and complicated and kind of fun that way. Book 2 is like all about system designing and coming to terms with who you are as a human being. Book 3 is like universal elements, and then book 4 is where everything goes to hell.
Well, so, let me ask Johnathan, because I am curious from a narrator's point of view. So much of lit RPG is brought to life. Like, we can, as authors, we can have great ideas, but it really, in our genre, you need somebody like you to bring it to life. And I'm curious, there's a lot of stuff out there that's basically like combat oriented, right? Lit RPG, and people dig that. They want that. But what is it? Is it kind of like a breath of fresh air sometimes when you get a book like one from the Symphony series, say, that's just a little bit different?
For sure. I mean, it's more ruminative, right? It's the construction of the world as it progresses through these books creates a foundation where, like, I get to take my time in a different way, right? Everything's not at 11 the whole time. I think also, the other thing, it is unsurprising to hear JD say that he spent that amount of time going through editing, getting them cleanly, perfected and ready for publication. Because, just to be really candid, right, depending on the book, the publisher, the author, the whatever, sometimes you'll get stuff from Royal Road that is sort of just funneled off, and it's kind of been massaged for publication, but you've got to do some lifting occasionally to fill in the gaps, or make sure that, like, if words that are absent on the page that a reader could fill in with their brain, it's going to land auditorially very different, and I got to fix that stuff. So just on a purely technical level, like, it's a refreshing change to get something that is completely polished, super clean, elegant, presented in a way that is digestible and performable. Like, the Symphony books are kind of a delight to perform in that regard. So yeah, is the answer.
That's really good to hear. You look like you have a comment. You look like you have a comment to that, JD.
I just wanted to ask him if Dionysus is still his favorite character. That's what he told me once before.
I did a message. I mean, like, Dionysus is not, and I don't, when I think I said this to you in the message I sent you, not just my favorite character in your books. I think it's the character I was born to play. I mean, I'm mixing my mythology here, but a guy who lives inside of a perpetual bacchanalia and is and is also just foul-mouthed and kind of like sort of angry for no reason. Love it. Couldn't enjoy it more.
The basis for his character was every frat guy I knew in college.
Yeah, that tracks.
I started thinking Kool-Aid Man plus frat guy. That's Dionysus right there.
Yep. Okay. Well, then guess what? We had a mind meld. It all worked out just fine.
Well, for everybody that knows Johnathan, he, when you meet him, he doesn't seem like an angry guy, but he and I share a love for angry music. And so, do you channel your love of that music when you're doing that character?
He's the Dionysus as presented in Symphony. The frat guy thing makes a ton of sense. He's just a bigger than life personality who's just operating at a really high boil and is kind of like unnecessarily hostile. And I just find that shit hilarious. So yeah, like, you could definitely see this character as written marching into a scene with, like, Lamb of God blaring in the background. Like, you could absolutely vibe on that for sure. Yeah. It's great. It's super fun to do. Super fun to do.
So I gave you a party scene in book 3 when you commented on that, by the way.
I have prepped it. I actually start recording it tomorrow.
Oh wow. Okay.
Ooh.
I was supposed to start after the new year, but I'm like I have, you know, I've got the time and it's sitting in my inbox, so I'm ready to jump into it. So I'm going to jump into it tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll be towards the end of book 3. You'll get a party scene with him getting drunk and getting everyone else drunk.
Yep. I will bide my time, but I am prepared for it and excited about it.
We have some folks in the chat who are saying hello. JP Weaver, Morgan, Erebus is in the chat. Everybody's saying hello. Somebody named Butopia. Okay, hello, Butopia. All right, so let's go to while we're on we're talking about characters. So this is a perfect thing to talk about with Johnathan here. So you have some side characters, JD, that you wanted to talk about: Sky, Alexander, and Elsie. So
with Symphony, there's the 4 books in the series. So far, I've submitted 3 to Podium. The 4th isn't under contract, so I have to talk to them about that eventually. But that's the final book in the Symphony series. After that, there was expansion opportunities. So there's The Boy and the Stick, which is about a character who's like one of the main villains. There's Primordial Poet, which is about Alexander. Then there's The Broken Sky, which is about a character named Sky. And these characters start to appear more and more often. Alexander was introduced in book 2, has much stronger presence in book 3, and is almost like a main side character in book 4. Sky is introduced in, I want to say, the end of book 3, and then has more of a presence in book 4. And all of them are interrelated stories that tie back into Symphony, and they're all required for the ending to make sense at the end of book 4. And then they all have the opportunity of having their own book series to follow based upon the events that occur with Walker Reed, the main character. And so I have all this plotted. I have 23 books plotted, including I Am a Bastard Sword, which is a bastard sword who's a bastard, and he was abandoned. So it's a triple pun for the title, which I thought was really fun. And so I have all this stuff planned out, and then I just have to see, if Symphony does well enough, then, me and Podium can keep going and rocking and rolling and getting on the series. If not, then I've got QuestWright, and then if not QuestWright, I've got The Man Who Chose the End, and I just bounce around. But I'm always plotting and planning. I mean, I've already got QuestWright 1 through 6 planned out. I've got 23 books in the Symphony series or the Symphony universe planned out, and I've got The Man Who Chose the End books 1 through 4 out of 10 planned out. Because why not?
We have a question in the chat that's what is the recommended reading order then for all of this?
For Symphony, it depends on if I get deals with Podium for continued books in the universe. So if I get continued deals, then it would actually be The Boy and the Stick would technically be a prequel, and then it would be Symphony 1, 2, 3, and then it would probably be The Broken Sky, and then it'd be Symphony 4, and then so it is a little Marvel-esque in that sense, Captain America style.
So we have 2 minutes left, JD and Johnathan, and I'm going to try to stick to this 30-minute time frame here. JD, you talked a little bit about kind of what you're working on now. Could you lead us into what's coming out, what people can look forward to, and kind of when, and then we'll switch over to Johnathan. Same thing, same question.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to take off my glasses and look at the camera. Hi, everyone. So QuestWright Book 1 finishes on January 9th. Book 2 takes place in a hostile environment, and Book 3 is already plotted. Once Book 3 is done, I'm starting The Man Who Chose the End, which is a huge twist on a lit RPG apocalypse where the protagonist not only is selected as the representative of humanity, but they're also the person selected to choose humanity's apocalypse. And that's what I have working on right now. Book 4 in Symphony is almost done edited. So then I can send it over to Podium and hopefully to Jonathan's waiting hands. That's it.
That's amazing. I feel like you needed a hot wing, right? If you watch Hot Ones, which camera? Johnathan, tell us what you're working on. Camera's there. Camera's there. Camera's there.
Sure. It's all Symphony all the time. Listen, I don't want to talk about anything else. It's Symphony. Symphony is my read Symphony. Someone wrote something here that I will just address quickly in the 30 seconds I have, which is Symphony is very cerebral, wasn't ready for it in the whatever. Symphony is very cerebral, and a word that I would add to that is there's like an elegance to the way in which it is cerebral. It is thoughtful. It is, it is evolution in real time. That is what you were watching happen in a condensed timeline. But it is a sophisticated and considered piece of literature that isn't about, as you said, isn't about like fights and whatever exclusively. There's action and there's intrigue and there's engagement, but it really does, like take a moment, take a break from numbers going up and dig into this series, because like it's actually telling a very interesting tale, and I think a tale that sort of reflects the very nature of what it means to like sort of be alive and make things. And I think that's I don't know, I really enjoy it a lot, and I would encourage everyone to jump in because they're great.
Well, thank you, Johnathan, but you're being very humble. Johnathan is an acclaimed actor and narrator, and he is the voice that I hear often through my house in various series, and someone I consider a friend and just an amazing person. So I'm hoping both of you can get to Lit RPG Con this coming summer. I know I saw Johnathan there last summer. JD, were you there?
No, but I'll be going this summer. I already bought tickets.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You can actually find me because I'll be the guy handing out quests. I made a quest booklet. I'm going to fill them out and then hand them out as like souvenirs.
Somebody said in the chat, I heard there will be quests.
Yeah, there'll definitely be quests. I call it conquests.
Conquest. I like it. I get it. Yeah. I'm digging the puns. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for everybody in the chat, and we'll see everybody back next week.
Thanks you very much.
Thanks, man. Bye.
All right.